Alright, everybody. This is kind of a video I'm throwing together just to show my kind of quick, dirty version of the process I go through for making a commander. Because I don't have a commander in mind, I'm going to randomcommander.com and going to roll for one randomly. I will probably pick the first one I get with a couple of caveats that make it harder to do quick and dirty. So we spun our card the first time, and it flipped nothing, which is kind of annoying. Oh, Roxanne is fairly new. She is from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. If I remember, this is a mana rock oriented commander, which can be fun. When Roxanne Starfall enters the battlefield or attacks, oh, sorry, she is a cat druid for 1 red, 1 green, and 3 generic mana, and she is 4/3. Anyway, when she enters the battlefield or attacks, which is pretty cool, create a tapped colorless artifact token named Meteorite. Uh, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to any target. So literally rocks falling from the sky. In addition, that rock can then tap for mana, which is pretty good. However, it enters tapped, so you won't be able to use it for mana on your next turn. So this is Ramp City. She has a second ability. Whenever you tap an artifact token for mana, add 1 mana of any type that artifact produced. So not only does she create mana rocks, she doubles the mana they produce. Alright, this is going to be interesting. I have a couple of options on what to do with her. I can either go big mana spell slinging or big mana creatures, or a combination of the two. I'm probably going to kind of land on the combination of the two, with a little bit of assistance for her being able to swing without opponents constantly blocking her out to stop her from, you know, getting her effect other than by casting her. She is very good, but they are going to want to kill her if you're going to keep generating lots and lots of mana rocks. Let's see what I can come up with. Roxanne! Demonetized. Not that I'm going for that with this video anyway. I'll just put the date on here so I know which one it is when I start filtering my stuff later. There it is, Starfall Savant. Alright, so I generally tend to set this to private until I'm happy with what the deck is. I don't need people critiquing my stuff before it's even close to done. Alright, so Roxanne is in our command zone right here. Let's head over to Scryfall. Hit up the advanced search. Our commander is green and red, so I go ahead and select that on the commander bar. That lends itself to most of the filters we want. And then go down, and I'm going to restrict myself to 50-cent cards this time around just to make the list a little shorter because there will be a lot. Oh, actually, let's do the ugly, boring stuff first. So, generally speaking, when you're building a commander deck, my guideline for the veggies, e.g., the stuff you kind of need in every deck to make sure it works, is quantity of ramp, a quantity of removal, and a quantity of card draw. Now, our commander is convenient because she both ramps and has a limited form of removal, but we're still going to want a good chunk of this stuff because her base mana cost is 5, which means it's going to be a little while before she generates your first removal or card draw. So, we're still going to want to put a chunk of ramp in here. Conveniently, because I use Architect, we have this little bonus up here. There's an extras button, and then a little drop down for card packages. I go ahead and hit that up. She is in green, so most of my ramp is probably going to be oriented around just being able to throw lands directly on the battlefield. She'll provide my rocks. I'll let Spell Slinging provide my lands. Alright, so we're in here for the cards in green, override ramp. Conveniently, Architect also shows us what the price point on these cards are at our preferred purchase point. I use TCG Player, they're the cheapest option, although they're also the option that will send you cards in 42 different packages. Depends on what you're into. Card Kingdom is much more expensive, but they'll also all come in one package. I have a lot of default choices I tend to make in these. I avoid mana dorks like Llanowar Elves. I tend to like my enchantment or sorcery slash instant based mana ramp. Uh, so I'm going to go ahead and start throwing this in here. I'm probably, so typically I would put 12 to 15 ramp in a deck. Because our commander provides some ramp, though, I'm going to keep that on the minimum side of that. So I'm going to put in 12 ramp cards, which should do the job pretty. All right, let's go into the main deck, though. I like to do a thing where I filter out my ramp and other things into their own categories. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the Wood Elves here. We'll hit a drop down on create new category for this. I'm going to call this one ramp / fixing. Ramp puts you ahead on mana. Fixing just make sure you get the colors you need. I tend to put both in the same category, even though a lot of people would argue with me and say fixing isn't ramp and therefore shouldn't be in the same category. I'm going to digress on that point. It's not that important. I have now created that category. This card sits in the ramp and fixing category. I can now hold control, click on other cards that are going to be in that same category, and drag them all over into that category. So I have a ramp and fixing category. This, and go into our removal category. This is going to be a little harder since I'm not fully convinced on whether my sub-theme is going to be closer to Stompy or more of the crazy spell slinging, although realistically it's going to be both. So what I'm going to hit up is destroy target. Oops, I spelled that totally wrong. Destroy target. And then I didn't have this filter on before. This only filters a few things. So I want to make it legal in Commander. This will filter out things like on cards that typically tend to show up. We still have our 50 cents on. We do. So hit the search button. All right. So let's go to mana value again because we don't want to pay a crazy amount for this stuff. All right. So we're in green and red. So things that say destroyed directly without damage oriented tends to be hitting artifacts or enchantments the most prevalently. We do need some creature destruction. That's almost always going to be damage based. Although our Meteor Rocks do cover a lot of that, especially if we can start getting them to trigger multiple times in a turn. We'll see what we can do with that. All right, let's see. So, it's way too expensive, I think. You also want your cards in these categories to be as versatile as possible. So if they fit a theme, they're useful. If they do multiple things or have multiple options, they're great. So like destroy target non-creature artifact is kind of narrow, but destroy target artifact or target creature with defender, this is a bad example, but that is more versatile than crush, but is still not great. Let's see, what do we want here? How heavy is this deck going to be on enchantments? Because I think I want to play one of my favorites. Yeah, I'm going to do it early for right now. So we're going to throw Tranquility into this bad boy, and we're going to throw that into a new custom category called Removal. Tranquility destroys all enchantments. Currently, I have no intention of going heavy on enchantments, so this is a safe bet. If we end up having too many enchantments, we might want to replace this card. But at the moment, it's really good and will ruin a lot of people's day. I won't lie. Also, 7 cents. We could ignore that. Also, because I know I'm in a theme with lots and lots of artifacts that are going to be on the battlefield. Rampage, I believe. Oh, some of these I'm coming up with because I remember them. Obviously, people who are newer aren't going to remember all these cards from the days of gameplay. It's not a big deal. A lot of these will come up with your focus searches that I was doing earlier. Why are you not popping up? Rampage of the Clans. Oh, because there's no P in it. I am not very... Oh, it showed up anyway. Excellent. Rampage of the Clans. So, this one's destroy all artifacts and enchantments. Then each permanent destroyed this way, its controller gets a 3/3 creature. Now, theoretically, this destroys all of our mana rocks that Roxanne created, and now we get a hopefully much bigger army than our opponents do. It's a risky card, but super fun and can really ruin someone's day. Alright, back to the actual search tool instead of just using my own inspirations. Oh, this is a fun one. I don't get to play this too often. Why not? Gorilla Shaman is, or as it's classically referred to, the Mox Monkey. Has the ability to pay 1 and double X to blow up an artifact. Doesn't tap it, so if you have a butt ton of mana, like our deck theoretically will, you can start cherry picking opponents' cards. Also, notably for 3 mana, this blows up Sol Rings, which will definitely upset some people. So let's throw the Gorilla Shaman. Gorilla Shaman. Also fairly cheap card, not that they finally reprinted it. Gorilla Shaman's in the list. What do we want here? Oh, there it is. Perfect. Yes. So another mass destruction spell, release the gremlins, also mana intensive, which we can do. But we can blow up all of our opponent's artifacts. We don't even need to touch our own if we don't want, and we get a bunch of 2/2s out of it. So definitely worth it. And the best part is it's playing to our theme and falling into a category that doesn't fill up the slot of our theme. Perfect. Exactly what we want. Let's see. So this is a nice example of the versatile option. A Braid here, which is deal 3 damage to a creature or destroy an artifact. Gives you 2 options, can be really, really helpful. And even if you brought out a Meteorite, that turns into 2 damage, can finish off a 5 toughness creature, which can be a real threat on the board sometimes. So we're definitely throwing in a Braid. Throw that into my removal category. Removal is another one, by the way. I didn't talk about it earlier, I don't think, but you want probably 10 to 12 removal. I include board wipes in removal. Not everyone does. Board wipes fluctuate in their popularity anywhere from... I only include 1 for a pinch situation to up to 3. I land in the 2 to 3 category, the exception being like Tranquility is technically a board wipe for enchantments. Release of Gremlins is technically a board wipe for artifacts. But those are a little more narrow, so I don't count them in the board wipe category, but they're definitely relevant for removal. Alright, let's keep searching. Good old Warhammer 40k Aberrant. Do you fit in the category? Alright, deals combat damage to a player. It actually blows up one of their artifacts or enchantments. And it plays into our large quantity of mana rocks category, so I'm definitely going to include the Aberrant. Go, Gene Stealer Cults. Aberrant, and you are in removal. Excellent. Alright, let's keep going. We might also go heavy stumpy, so I might want to do a search on let's see how many we got of non-creature removal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, I think I'm going to switch up my search a little bit. Start finding... Oh, didn't mean to do that. Start finding myself some fight type effects, because I think we're going to have a subcategory of big stompy creatures. Maybe even Hydras. That's an option. Go heavy Hydras? Maybe. We'll think about it. Alright, once again, adjust the cost so that we hit the cheap stuff early. Alright, Blizzard Brawl would be ideal because it gives you indestructible. However, snow basics are far too expensive. We have no guarantee to have enough snowlands out to make this work, so we're going to skip it. Bushwhack hits us in multiple ways. It can search for land if we need it, but otherwise one of our big guys can punch a thing. Also, our commander's not necessarily small, so she can punch some stuff too. So Bushwhack. And once again, a nice cheap card that goes into our removal category. Let's see. A lot of times we're also going to actually, I'll filter this just to make it a little bit more versatile. There's plenty of fights. Many of them are sorceries. In case of removal, you often want instant speed, so I'm going to add instant to the list and see how many options we get out of that. Go back to my filter, go to mana value. All right, so mutant spray. That one only works on counters, which we may or may not have a lot of. Tail Swipe is very good, though. Tail Swipe is instant speed removal. We'll take it. Alrighty. Ancient Animus. +1/+1 counter on a legendary and then fight. Absolutely great. Ancient Animus is good. Lets Roxanne get bigger, which makes her harder to block when she wants to make more mana rocks. I know this is super boring to listen to, but I definitely am trying to get an idea of why I choose things and how often I try to make sure it fits the theme. I forgot to grab these and pull them in the removal category right away. They're in now. Pounce is an excellent one because it's cheap and simple, so we'll go with that one. What are we up to? We're at 10 removal. Am I happy with that? I think I'm going to stick with it right now. Now comes the category that is the most important and also the most boring to search for, which is card draw spells. Now, I know I'm going to be partially stompy on this, so I think we might be able. Now let's pull up just draw first, see what pops up. But I think I want to restrict it to creatures. We got a lot of pages of this. What's this look like? Mana value. Alright, what do we got? So we got a lot of cantrips, which are fine. There's nothing wrong with cantrips. However, they're not the most versatile thing that we're looking at here. These are so far all incidental drops. This could be interesting for 1 mana. Elven Farsight. In fact, it's pretty good if we're going to have a creature-heavy theme. So, Elven Farsight. Elven Farsight lets you scry 3 and then reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature, it goes in your hand. Effectively, it says draw a creature from the top 3 cards of your deck, or a creature out of the top 3 cards of your deck. Quite fun, quite interesting. I'm going to create a new category for this. I call it card advantage. I tend to put card draw, but also scry effects, especially powerful ones, in card advantage. Anything that recurs from your graveyard is card advantage for me as well. Basically, anything that leaves you with more cards in your hand, I'm calling card advantage, or gives you a choice of what's coming next. Also card advantage. In my eyes, people would argue with me on that. That's their issue. Alright, Faithless is a little. If we had a discard theme, Faithless would be an excellent choice here. Yeah, I'm going to try to avoid a lot of the draw discard effects, which are prevalent in red, unfortunately. But I really want to keep our graveyard relatively clean because I'm not going to have a lot of recursion going on, I don't think, with this deck. It's possible, but not guaranteed. Okay, this one's solid. If we're going to be swinging with creatures, 6th Sense is decent. Just every time it deals combat damage, draw a card. The only flaw is we're probably never going to get it back once it's lost. But it also creates a must answer type category because you can't let them keep drawing cards. All right. Actually, while I'm flipping through this, another good card advantage / ramp option is this guy, which everyone thinks is overcosted these days, although it is an icon of the game. That's a good old-fashioned sad robot, aka Solemn Simulacrum. And yes, that is how you say it. I'm going to throw this in card advantage, even though the first thing it does is ramp you, but I have plenty in ramp, and I don't want to overflood my categories. Make sure I have enough open space to actually do the stuff that's on theme. Okay, I do like this one. It's risk reward, but in theory we should be ahead of the curve if we're going to play it. Eye of Vecna is a very good card tool. When it enters play, you can pay 2 life and you draw a card, and then every upkeep, the same effect will happen. You have the option to pay 2 life if you do draw a card. Love me an Eye of Vecna. If we're in black, we might consider doing a full Vecna package, but we are not in black, so it's not an option. Ignore that I said that. Eye of Vecna goes into card advantage immediately. It's very good there. I think what I'm going to do here is change up my search parameter a little bit and see if we can't find some effects that are solid for sacrificing an artifact, which we theoretically will have a big old pile of. So, oh, I lost all my search criteria. That's not good. Gary, Legal Commander. $0.50. All right, and then we do a search for sacrifice a artifact. All right, let's see what we come up with. So once again, filtering by mana value just to get the cheap stuff up front. Nope, this is just using the word sacrifice. So here's what we're going to do. Quote, so that it looks for exactly that line instead of just the words in that line. Just looking a little too similar, though. No, it's definitely different. All right, excellent. All right, Hacky Scrap Chomper seems perfect, so that's good. And it's cheap. Hacky Scrap Chomper, you're in card advantage. This deck does not have built-in card advantage for it, so I am going to push into a little bit more than the 10 or 12 card advantage cards I would typically have. I'm probably going to push closer to 15. Let's see what else we can come up with. Command Answers is perfect. View to these. Cards like Demand Answers sacrifice an artifact to draw cards. Because of our commander, she can pay that entire cost, and it basically just costs us that artifact, which is pretty great. Perfectly on theme, and I love it. Let me see. I'm going to do an experiment with filtering here quick. See if I can get both to appear. Value. It looks like it's going to work. Excellent. Reckless Detective seems solid. Requires us to attack, but it is a pretty low-key threat, so hopefully our bigger, scarier stuff will keep it somewhat in check. Reckless D, who doesn't love that? Not cool, man. Not cool. 3 mana is a lot. I'm going to say, oh, all right, much narrower for a sacrifice an artifact and draw, but are 3 mana worth it? I don't know. Trading Post is perfect, though. And it's finally a cheap card to boot. Thank you for the reprints, Wizards. To hell with the collectors. I only care about me and my ability to play the game that I enjoy. Alright, I'm not finding a lot of these in this specific sacrifice artifact category, so we're going to go back to our previous search of just draw, but I want to attach it to creatures specifically. See what I come up with there. Because we want repeatable draw. I'm going to stop filtering by mana value, because often creatures aren't cheap when they draw a card, unless they're a commander, and then they're usually narrow. Acolyte Hybrid seems really solid, because it's both removal and card draw, which is pretty great. You also allowed to blow up your own stuff with it if your opponents don't have any anymore. And once again, bonus 40k card. There she is, putting in a card advantage, but it's really removal. But we'll take both. Happily, in fact. Yeah, that's pretty much perfect. I like that. We can definitely afford it quickly in the deck. And it gives a card advantage. So Battle Mammoth it is. It goes right into card advantage. We get a few more card advantage cards going here. Ooh, that's kind of neat. Kind of a second copy of our guy. So Cactarantula, fun name. Also has reach, which is never a bad thing. Block the occasional threatening flyer, and is a very large creature that can block flyers, which will keep a lot of opponents at bay. So Cactarantula. Costs 6 mana, but our deck should be able to do it pretty effectively with 3 mana rocks. Yeah, why not? I've never played the card. I bet it's cheap. Citadel Wood Readers. 4 cents. I will take it. And 6 mana should be easy in this particular deck. I think I'm going to put it in just because it's fun. Dragon Mage is a wheel effect. When it deals damage, everyone discards their hand and draws 7 new cards. Could help our opponents, but if our hand is empty, it helps us too, and we have a lot of mana to pay for stuff early. And a couple more card advantage cards, and then we're going to go into the meat and potatoes of this deck. I really want to find some that are repeatable sources of card draw. Oh, perfect. Keeper. Keeper of Fables is always excellent card draw if you're not playing humans. Or if you have no humans, rather. Good card advantage. Really like it. Yeah, let's have fun with another 40k card. Karn the Betrayer, which could screw us, but that's kind of the point. Betrayer, add that to card advantage. That puts us at 15 card advantage, including one super duper fun one. That's done with the meat and potatoes. I am going to throw some land in here because it is also important to the deck. Actually, I suppose I should go through that. Because land matters too. Where's our mana base for a 2 to 3 color deck on the cheap? That's this third category here. So the things I always put in, obviously you're restricted by your colors, but things I always put in are these search for basics cards. Because while people will say you don't get any real mathematical advantage, I do like thinning cards out of the deck. So you're really getting 2 cards out of the deck for every one of them you pull. We are in red and green, so the first 2 photos have no red and green in them, which is fun. There we go. Temple of Abandon. Classic Scryland. Let's see. Where are we at? Rugged Highlands. This is questionable include, but it is a super cheap card. It just enters tapped, and you gain a life off of it, which is fine. Not bad, not good, just fine. Kazandu Refuge is the same card with a different name. Myriad Landscape I will always include. That lets you search for 2 basics. Both of them have to be the same basic, but nonetheless lets you search for basics. Make sure Mountain's on my list because we're going to have a bunch of those. We'll have to fill out the deck, especially if we want it affordable. This is also a category of cards I always include. The gilded add 2 mana ones that bounce a land when they enter the battlefield. But they are pretty good for putting you slightly ahead of the curve on mana. Not a vast amount, but enough. Exotic Orchard gets exponentially more powerful the more colors your deck is, but I still find it worthwhile even in a 2-color deck because the odds are high someone's going to match at least one of your colors. Evolving Wild's always good, include my forest. Command Tower is universal. You'll put this in every multicolored deck because it is the best dual land that exists. It covers every color you've got and doesn't enter tapped. So every deck is going to have that. Let's see, Cinderglade. Oh, these are on the cheap now. Cinderglade, definitely worth it. 21 cents, and it doesn't enter untapped if you meet the land conditions, which is pretty nice. Oh, this is the entire list. Well, that's a disappointment. So our land count is at 12. I'm going to add a few more of these that I know are pretty decent. Also, search your deck out cards. So, Shire. This is from Lord of the Rings. Shire Terrace. That's another search for cards. Promising Vein. Also pretty good. Escape Tunnel. Where are we at? Escape Tunnel. There it is. This is really nice. That is both a search for a basic or make a creature unblockable, although in the case of our deck, I believe it has a power. Yeah, it has to be power 2 or less. It won't work too well in our deck, but it still searches for a basic, which I think is relevant. That's probably enough of the fixing cards, so we'll fill the rest of this out with basics. Land count is pretty controversial category. A lot of people say you have to have a lot of land. A bunch of people say cut them to the absolute bare minimum that you can, to the point where I've seen people running like 25 lands in a 100-card deck. That's terrible. Definitely don't do that. But my general guideline is if it's 1 or 2 colors, it's going to be 35 lands, and then each color you add in your commander's identity, add 1 more land. As that expands, instead of massively increasing the land count, what you do is you'll have less and less basics in the deck, and more of the 2 and 3 color fixing lands. But for now, I have 15 cards here, which means leaves me 20 open slots for lands, so I'm going to add 10 of each of the 2 basics. There's a whole lot of theories about land balance and what they should do, but in a 100-card deck, I'd much rather have a fairly equal chance of drawing both of my colors. There we go. We're at 35 lands. Now we get to go to the meat and potatoes section at last. All right, so we know that we want to generate boatloads of mana rocks with her. That means bringing her in, but also attacking every turn, and we can't risk her dying too often, because even though we'll have a bunch of mana rocks on the table, the high mana value isn't there until she's actually out on the table. So what we're going to do is we are going to push into evasive equipment and auras. So what we want to give her are things like, let me see here. Let's go into artifacts that say can't. Do they use the conjunction? Can't be blocked is the first category we want. This also might put us in solid commander damage territory if we really want to build up for it. I am going to change my category from artifacts. Whoops, too far. I'm going to turn off artifact, and instead I'm going to say equipment. That way, we won't get things that just make themselves unblockable. Although equipment is not the only way to do this, but this will narrow it down pretty nicely. Let's see. Oh, there's not very many can't be blocked in these colors. But I do have a couple of these that I really like that say can't be blocked by more than 1 creature, which is pretty neat. So we'll put in Rope, and we'll put in Wolf Rider's Saddle. Can't believe there's a card just called Rope. I guess go Clue. Immediately, I'm going to create a category called Synergy. This is just my catch-all category for cards that are built specifically to make my commander do what she is specifically doing. Let's see, what was the other one? Wolf Rider's Saddle. Too many can't be blocked here. and that or very narrow can't be blocks. All right, that's spicy. Psychic Paper is pretty interesting, and technically changes the name of your commander, meaning she is no longer legendary. Unfortunately, we don't have a way to take advantage of that, but it's fun anyway. And it gives her a ward, which is nice protection to boot. Psychic Paper, go Doctor Who. All right, again, synergy. I want, let me see, how many card slots do I have left? I'm at only 76 cards. So what I'm going to do is to probably put 10-ish cards in that make my commander hard to block, and then the rest of the cards will be our big payoffs for our big mana. The stuff that's going to let us swing hard and ugly. That, I don't even know what I'm going to search for yet. We'll figure out when it happens. So, let's see. We want things like First Strike. That should be often is a problem for people who definitely don't want to deal with their stuff being killed by a fairly large creature. So Knife, once again, a pretty cheap include. Go Clue, of all things. I think this is the first time I've looked at these Clue-related cards and actually wanted to include them in the deck. Freaky weird, and I kind of like that. Okay, here we go. Ace's Baseball Bat it is. +3/+0. Has First Strike. While it's attacking, it has First Strike, and if for some reason your opponent controls a Dalek, they have to block. Correction to a statement I made in a game. I thought there was only one baseball bat in the game, and I'm wrong. There is two. There's Ace's Baseball Bat and Lucille from Walking Dead. Don't get me started. Bladed Pinions is perfect, both flying and First Strike, making it a pretty limited ability to be blocked. So, Bladed Peanuts. Not really peanuts, but peanuts. Dang it. Bladed Pinions right here into Synergy. Have it cost a lot to equip, These are starting to get rough just because their equip costs are quite high. Ooh, that's spicy. Why not? Moon Silver Spear. I love that card anyway. And it'll give you angels, which is just fun. All right, let's get some equipment that does flying instead. I'm going to definitely filter this one by mana value. Let's just get flying. Yeah, she just has flying. Why not? Cliffhaven, Kite Sail. Oh, two more of these things that make them hard to block. Let's see. Go with some Cobbled Wings. Flying is definitely one of your best categories for being hard to block. So these creatures that are dependent on your dealing combat damage should be pretty fun. All right, I know I'm still in the difficult to block category, but I want to see if a particular card is in our price range. He is not. Wolfgar. You basically will trigger your commander twice, which is really good. But almost $3 is quite a bit. I'm going to do... No, I'm going to get rid of that. It's definitely a card you want to consider for a deck. Like, this is the kind of category where you'll go, is it worth going outside of my $1 card budget for it? It's just one card. Our current deck is $13 at the moment, and that's including the basic lands, which are about 10 cents each, which you're not going to pay. You'll be able to get them quite cheaply from a lot of different places. Or even free, depending on who you ask, because many people have way too many. And regular Kite Sail, I think, will be our last one. So a lot of unblockability and flight capability, letting our commander keep generating rocks constantly. All right. So that is going to be our enablers. Now let's do our big swings. So I don't know what I want to do precisely with this one. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here to the filters and get really swingy and say mana value is equal to or greater than or equal to, say, let's call it reasonable. We have 3 rocks and we'll call it 6. So that will be really easy for us to cast. Let's see what crazy shit we can find in that category of stuff. No need to filter because these are going to be all over the place. Accomplished automaton is immediately boring because it's just counters or servos, which is just okay. Well, if we end up going creature heavy, which maybe we want to, aggressive mammoth is perfect because your large creature is also trampling. Kind of cool. So we're going to hit that and assume I want to hit creatures. Aggressive mammoth. Alright, we'll also throw that in synergy. Realistically, the synergy category, where I had all these enablers, you might have wanted to create a category called enablers. I usually don't, because all these are about the deck and everything else is veggies. Ooh, there's also a world where we just become a dragon sub-theme, because there's a lot of over-costed dragons that do cool stuff that we can get out pretty fast and easy. Do I want to consider that option? Maybe. Let me see what this first page looks like and land on it after that. Before I move on to that, because I do think I'm going to do dragons as the sub theme, but I want this Apex of Power because it's just fun. Apex of Power. Apex of Power lets you exile 7 cards. You can play them this turn, and if you cast it from your hand, which we usually will, it also generates 10 mana to cast those cards with, plus all the extra mana we're producing from our crazy mana box. Should be pretty fun. Alright, so let's refine this filter to include only creatures. Let's see what we come up with. Actually, nope. I'm going to remove creature and we're going to switch it to dragon. Insert that. What kind of craziness can we get out of this? This is a mana sink, which could really pay off. We can clear a lot of creatures from the board with the Ancient Hellkite. Yeah, let's do it. Ancient Hellkite's on the list. Dream Pillager is pretty solid. Puts us ahead of the curve. And lets us spend some of that excess mana we could actually be building up. Flame Blast Dragon. Seems worth it for targeted removal. Here we have stuff expanding our ordinary categories outwards, meaning that we now have more removal than we would have, which is pretty great. Alright, that was pretty neat. Since we have a small fight sub-theme happening in our removal. So Foe Razor is also it. Jugan is perfect. It'll make our commander scarier. I like me a Null Spine Dragon. That seems pretty solid and adds to our card advantage. Scourge of the Throne. That's a finisher for us. Yeah, I'm definitely not talking through this quite enough. But Steel Hellkite for sure. That's another removal piece. Skyline Despots. So I'm pretty happy with that in terms of dragon category. Let's hit up like sorceries, really expensive sorceries. And I'm going to put, we'll keep the mana value where it is. Remember, these are still being filtered by dollar value of 50 cents. I'm going to hit up Genesis Storm. This is potentially a great way to get some free value. And since we're permanent heavy, we're likely to get some really good stuff. And potentially, bare minimum, it will be copied at least once. So it'll give us 2 creatures for 6 mana, or at least potentially 2 creatures for 6 mana. Not guaranteed, but still pretty good probability. 5 card slots left for this guy. I'm looking for some really big haymakers at this point, because right now, these expensive cards really not that expensive. You know what I'm going to do? We're going to put the mana value of stuff up to 8. This should narrow it down quite a bit. Alright, Thunderous Debut is perfect in this deck. Alright. And no, I'm not quite done filling this thing out, but I'm going to go back to a previous category, ramp and fixing, and I'm going to make a couple of alterations because there's a thing I forgot about that is pretty important. One, our deck actually cares about mana rocks, so we could actually change this entire category into mana rocks, and she would take advantage of it quite a bit. So I think I am going to do that. So bear with me here while I get rid of a lot of this stuff, although some of these remain mana rocks regardless. But I'm going to drop all these things. We'll leave the bauble, but everything else is going to get replaced with a mana producing artifact, which I typically wouldn't do in a green deck, but this deck actually cares about them. So the easy way to do this is to hit up the extras, go back to card packages, and there's a category called Mana Rocks. Pull up the preview image on those. The first 2 are always going to be in your deck. Sol Ring and Arcane Signet, although Sol Ring these days is up at $1.51. It's the most efficient mana in the game, pretty much hands down. Now we're looking for rocks that either cost 2 or produce mana in our colors. Or preferably both, though you're not guaranteed to get that. Belwar Stone taps based on opponent's permanents, or opponent's lands rather, but worth it at 2 mana. Let's see. Mind Stone is pretty solid choice. It also becomes card drop later in a pinch. Commander Sphere costs 3, but the one I like about this is you can tap it for mana, and you can sacrifice it while it's tapped to draw its card effect, which is pretty nice. Rule Signet, always good. Always good. Pay 1 mana to get 2 mana. Pretty solid. Thought Vessels win. And then I do like the Diamond Cycle personally. Not everyone does. These produce 1 mana of one of your colors, but they enter tapped. They're bonus rock, and our commander will let them tap for 2 mana instead of 1, which is pretty solid. Everflowing Chalice is going to be great in a deck that we're producing so much mana in already. Thrandanimo, not bad either. And the rest of these are just okay. Liquid Metal Torque is good. Decanter of Endless Water is decent, although it is 3 mana instead of 2, but it's worth it. Warm Power Stone is a weaker version of Sol Ring, but still pretty good when we're producing 3 mana with it. Alright, where does that put me for my ramp category now? Because I basically reset the category. We got more ramp than we had before, but I think that's perfectly fine. Since our commander can take very good advantage of these rocks anyway, I think that's well worth it. Yep. And we still have 1 slot left that we can throw a big Haymaker card into. We're not playing Warp World. I don't love that. Volleyballers, nope. All right, let's find us a big, expensive creature then. Or big, expensive something. Maybe an artifact. Avatar Slaughter seems pretty good with our dragon something. Avatar Slaughter. All right, so that's the baseline construction of the deck. I want to show you one more trick with Architect just because it's kind of neat, although it doesn't work as well as it seems, but it can show you what's happening right now. This total deck value is at $29.04. That does include doesn't include basic lands, rather it excludes that cost. But what we can do, this 2104, we can hit Control A to select all of our cards, go into the little expanded menu, hit Optimize Printings. You don't need to change anything here, just wants to optimize based on what you like the most. I only hit the cheapest button because that's what I care about the most. If that, this is going to replace 27 cards with the same card, but from a different printing. That now brings our deck's cost down to $17.55. That is relative. That is the cheapest it could possibly be, assuming you don't pay any shipping for anything, which is not always guaranteed. But now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and hit the buy button. I've already selected my price filtering down here to TCG Player, so that's where it's going to send me when I hit the buy button. Click the buy button, go to TCG Player. Alright, so I cut the TCG Player segment out of this video mainly because TCG Player was acting up and showing a couple of $1,000 cards that wouldn't lead through their optimization process. That doesn't always happen, but once in a while someone figures out how to game their system and manage to force a very expensive card into your deck. Keep an eye out for that. Don't buy those. Usually you can get your deck pretty cheaply from TCG Player. What I am going to do here, though, is do one more step you can do on deck building. It is entirely optional, but I do like to do it when I'm done with the deck so that I can kind of see if I missed any lines of play, or if I see some cards that are better than the selections I made, or even better than that, cheaper than the selections I made. But yeah, let's take a look at EDH Rec. So this is the front page of their site. You'll see a bunch of articles, whatnot like that. A Commander of the Day, incidentally Wolfgar, who I looked at earlier, which is kind of a neat random thing that happened. But we want to look at our commander. So currently, our commander is a 2-color commander in Gruul colors, which would be red and green, which is right down here. You hit that button. This gives a list of all the commanders that have a deck in this database. And we're just going to scroll through and find where she sits. There she is, Roxanne. There's 1,258 decks already, though, which is pretty impressive. So I'm going to click on Roxanne. Because I intentionally build on a budget, I'm going to go ahead and click the low budget button right here in the middle. There's also a list of sub-themes that the deck can be built around. None of these is really how I built it, so I'm going to keep all the themes in place, and we're just going to look at the most prevalent cards within those categories. Let's see if there's any of these cards that stand out to make Roxanne particularly interesting. So Jolene creates treasure tokens for attacking with high-power creatures, aka 4 or greater, and can sacrifice to deal damage to things. Interesting artifact sub-theme, a little bit of ramp. We kind of don't need it, although sacrificing treasures will still generate 2 mana using our commander, which is worth looking at and is a 35-cent card. Might be worth it, but we'd be likely replacing a mana rock, and I don't necessarily know how I feel about that. Magna the Hordemaster. When you commit a crime, committing a crime is when you target an opponent or an opponent's stuff. It is considered committing a crime and then often has the triggered effects here. In this case, you create a treasure for committing a crime. We don't have a crazy number of things that target opponents with spells or abilities, but we do have some. That could also be a good thing. Magna's 99 cents. Not bad. I would probably replace... what would I replace? Yeah, that's probably another mana rock replacement. Unfortunately, that means we have less mana rocks. She incidentally creates them, but she's not guaranteed to create them. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. Here we go. Spell of the Ice Shaper. She also makes mana rocks by tapping and paying mana to get the mana rocks, which is okay. But more importantly, she can pay 8 mana, look at the top 4 cards of your library, and can cast a spell from among those cards. This is probably what we're looking for as effect. I might actually replace a card draw with this card, since she's probably not going to produce the rocks, but she will most certainly use this ability to cast cards from the top of your deck. Pretty decent. All right, so yeah, this was just a really basic rundown of EDH Rec. The list of cards they put on here is usually pretty long. There's a couple of tools on the site you can use to actually generate an entire deck out of the most prevalently used cards. Sort of reverse engineering a deck where instead of you're building it from the ground up, you instead kind of throw the deck into Architect. You remove all the cards that are too expensive or the cards that you don't particularly like and replace them with new cards. That can also be a great approach. You'll definitely build the deck a little faster, but it is a semi-random deck, so you may or may not want to consider doing that. It's kind of up to the style you start feeling comfortable with. With that, I believe this video is at its end, so I will go ahead and leave you with a fond farewell.